My name is Anthony Allen. I'm the president of the Dubuque branch of the NAACP. I'm also the chairperson for the Dubuque Human Rights Commission. And that's very important because civil rights and human rights work hand in hand. We opt for human rights, but sometimes the civil part is not there. So we always have to do the civil rights in order for some individuals within society to get to the human rights level. And that's why we have the protected classes and all of the things that come with that. I'm not an expert, but I am an expert in my life. So I'll be talking about the NAACP in regards to the historical concept of the NAACP, talking about civil rights and the movements within the civil rights. But more importantly, when we get to about 1967, this becomes personal civil rights with me because I was born in 67. And from 67 up until now, I'm an actual witness of civil rights, not just in a historical context, but actual personal gain or personal loss. So understand that as so. So I'll be talking about Dubuque in the later part. There'll be a 4-minute film within the discussion, and then we'll get back to some very important dates. Especially at the end, we'll talk about the Dubuque branch initiatives. In 2014, the National NAACP called for a March of Justice. So we devoted a day, which was December 13, 2014, as a March for Justice. With that March for Justice, we created the Dubuque branch, some initiatives, and I'll share with you, and we'll talk about those at the end. We'll talk about some accomplishments that we had, but more importantly, we need to discuss civil rights. I work for the school district, and there's a young man within the school district. He wrote this 2 years ago in regards to our elections. And the young man's name is Michael Drake, and he shared with us a poem. We created a poem. So I asked him for the poem because I thought it was very significant in some of the things that I do in my life. So Michael said, "O America, confirm thy flaws. America, mend thy soul and God. Though beautiful, you create stress for the pilgrim, whose feet beat across the stern wilderness." This is very powerful. From at the time the student was a junior in high school. So I asked him, could I read this often at presentations? And he, of course, said yes. So this is a journey of the historical background. So the NAACP, we founded in 1908, based out of race riots. We work for the elimination of racial discrimination, fair housing, and employment, which continues to happen today. If it was happening then, and it's still happening now, where are we at? Oftentimes we talk about marathon, that this is a marathon again, not a sprint. I agree, we're at a marathon, but what mile are we on? Are we on mile 3, mile 4, mile 24? I mean, where are we at? A marathon is 26 miles. I mean, we got to be close to something. But it doesn't seem like, we're just running. We have to be running for something. So we work on political lobbying, social change, legal action, and education to improve the quality of life for African Americans. It says African Americans, but it's similar to this shirt, Black Lives Matter. Oftentimes I wear this shirt, people say, oh, all lives matter. I agree with you 100% all lives matter. I'm just bringing it to the point that you have not been recognizing Black lives. So when you see African Americans, we're talking about basically the bottom of the totem pole. If the bottom is not being conditioned to at least run next to the top, then we have a problem. And so we speak from that point of view, and we always go into political lobbying, but we don't endorse candidates. But we do want to move and shake the barrier. So the association was founded by Mary White Ovington, Oswald Garrison Billiard, W.E.B. Du Bois, Ida B. Wells Barnett, and Mary Church Terrell. Okay. So I usually use this logo in similar things, but these are the founders. It's oftentimes most people have an argument with us. Currently on our website, actually, someone argued to the point that why you guys say you're a racist organization if you're just focusing on colored people. And they go into deep detail instead of looking at the history of the NAACP. So in 1913, under Wilson, president, segregation, imposed racial segregation in government offices in Washington, D.C. This is our capital. Imposed it. So, and we also learned to harness the power of the publicity through the D.W. Griffith's inflammatory birth of a nation. That was 1915. We're in 2019. And we're still having issues with hoods and black faces. Yeah. In Washington, D.C. So, this will be the short film, and then after that we'll get into some deep discussions, some important dates, and feel free at any moment in time to ask me a question. Oftentimes this presentation is done with high school students. So most of it is me giving them information, throwing it at them and allow for feedback. But oftentimes I set it up with usually a program that I like to say, have you heard it, read it, or said it? And what this does is allow us to look at our implicit biases. Oftentimes we don't know where it comes from. Unfortunately, I'll know the author's name by the time I finish, but there's a movie out and also a book called The Hate You Give that's currently out now. And it was an educational moment for me because the hate you give little infants F's everyone. That's the actual acronym that Tupac Shakur created. But we all thought, in America, we all thought it thug life. When you see thug life, you think of gangsters and all this other negative stuff. Tupac was actually saying, the hate you give little infants F's everyone. Thug life. And we're still in that dilemma. Little ones are still taught things, that they really have no clue about until they get a little older. My mom always taught me God doesn't like uglies, not too happy about pretty, just be yourself. I never understood any of that. Living in an all-black community, going to an all-black school, shopping at all-black, everything was all black. I never understood that until I moved to Dubuque, Iowa 31 years ago. I ran into some, different types of people. But civil rights has helped me work toward becoming civil. Working within that. So these are some important dates. Oftentimes there are riots. The NAACP, we honor the protest, we honor the marching, but we also honor working together. One of the things in there was MLK was about action in NAACP, and that was some of the turmoil. So oftentimes we can move the stake different ways. An example is if we all are traveling to Chicago, Illinois, some of you take a bike, your long ride. Some take a bus, some take a car, and some fly. The goal is still Chicago. We're just doing it different routes. We're just doing it different ways. And oftentimes we don't sit down and discuss our route. We don't discuss the travel. Because your travel may be different from my travel, especially as we move through civil rights. The American Civil Liberties Union was founded in 1920. So throughout this document, you'll see that these civil rights organizations throughout, the NAACP, we may be the oldest, but there are several other organizations out there that are working the same way we're working. Supreme Court ruled in Moore versus Dempsey in 23. You know, very key. Exclusion of African Americans from a jury was inconsistent with the right to a fair trial. That was 1923, and to this day we're still having issues with minorities being on jury duty. I remember years ago in Dubuque, Iowa, right here, we were trying to figure out how can we have a plan where we can get more minorities, people who look like me, in case I go to trial, I can have a fair trial. And this was 1923, and here we are, you know, a century later. We're still having issues. So once again, is it a movement? Is it a marathon movement? Or is it several sprints within it? Because if it's a marathon, once again I ask, what mile are we on? Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters in 1925, very key. LULAC, 1929. You know, the Tuskegee Airmen. We got CORE down here, I think in Chicago, Illinois, Congress of Racial Equality, founded in 1942. In 45, Walter White and W.E.B. Du Bois to the United Nations Conference on International Organization to propose the abolition of the colonial system. Of course, Brown versus the Board of Education, very key. To this day, we're still working on educational issues. We still, you know, like I said, I grew up in Chicago, Illinois. I'm pretty sure that my books probably didn't look like some of your books. My gymnasium probably didn't look similar to some of the gymnasiums that you may have had. My building, my school was an old meat locker. Now it's great, but it was an old meat locker. So education has always been a thorn in civil rights. Education, jobs, and housing. Mass incarceration. United States Commission on Civil Rights was created in 1957. That's amazing. NAACP 1909, 1957. Actually, in Juneteenth represents the July 4th of African Americans, in a nutshell. So June 19th, 1865. 1865 was the last known American state to abolish slavery. So that was in June of 1865. Christmas Eve, 1865, guess what happened? The KKK was established. And with that comes lynchings, comes, a lot of Jim Crow laws began to surface. We're talking about the Reconstruction era coming up in that moment, where it's still recorded as one of the greatest elements for African Americans in regards to educational rise. But the Jim Crow laws kicked in and things began to look not so great. Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, founded in 1960. And I'm sorry about this slide, it looked good when I was doing it. So, I apologize for that. Rosa Parks was arrested. Key point, some of the key points in here, right up in this area, here. MLK visits Cornell College in Iowa. MLK came to speak with Cornell in regards to the matter of Ralph Montgomery. And we'll talk about Ralph Montgomery as we move on. 1965, the Voting Rights Act. 1964, the Civil Rights Act. Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, founded in 1966. Very important for us to understand the Black Panther Party, because most often we hear the Black Panther Party as a terrorist organization, or it's a destructive, violent organization. You know, actually, the Panther Party is should be giving credit to some of our gun laws we have today. In regards to, before the Panther Party, you can carry a gun, all over the place. Some people can still do that. But after the Black Panther Party, in order to carry a weapon, you have to point it to the ground and not actually point it at anyone, or it can't be loaded. Unlawful assembly, Black Panther Party. More than 3 to 5 black men together, that's unlawful. That's bad assembly. But the Black Panther Party was about helping the kids. It takes a village to raise children. One of the first things the Black Panther Party did was create what we now call free and reduced lunch. It was free lunch, but we called it, but every morning they would get up and feed all the kids in the neighborhood, wherever the party, wherever there was a chapter. And it eventually moved on to free and reduced lunch. 68 was the Fair Housing Act. The Southern Poverty Law Center, founded in 71. Dubuque chapter of the NAACP, established in 89. Very key. We were chapters then, now we're branches. Don't ask me, I think they want to be close to Mother Nature, the tree. Constructive Integration Task Force was created in 89. And then by 1991, 8 crosses were burned in Dubuque, Iowa. In a matter of 2 years. The hate you give little infants F's everyone. At the time, when those crosses were being burned, one of the common rhetoric things were just little kids. They don't understand what they're doing. I often hear that through civil rights travels. Or they're young, they don't understand what's going on. Similar to what we have right now going on in our national rhetoric. He was 25, he's not, they were actually arguing the other day about whether or not 25 years old were grown. Well, I don't know about anybody else, but I remember when I was 25. And I remember my mom telling me, you're grown. So, and I kind of believed it because when I wasn't grown, she was giving me resources. When she said I was grown, they stopped. So I was grown. So at 25, and at 20, I still can remember things that I did at 25. I definitely will remember if I dressed up in a hood. I would definitely remember if I put white out on my face. If I went white face when I was 25, I would remember that. I wouldn't have to decide. I don't know if I was the guy under the hood or So it's things like that keeps us stuck in this situation. This perpetual movement, we call it. Most people think the civil rights has ended. They say, oh, in the 1960s this happened. Most people think it's not going. It's a movement. With the movement, it's still moving. We still have some things to move out of our current administration. So it's a movement. We need to keep that in mind. A movement, because our kids are not getting this historical education about this movement. This movement is very important for kids to understand. 1992 was the riots. Then the Dubuque branch, in 93 we created a MOU with the city of Dubuque. Within that MOU comes the Dubuque Community Action Panel, was formed in 94. Since then, the DCAP is now Dubuque Community Police Relations Committee. This committee allows for individuals, all of us, if you feel like you have been discriminated against within the city, well, by the police officers within the city, you can fill out a form. It's an 18-person committee. 9, but 9 will hear your case. And you can go before them. It's not a punitive, a punishable type of committee, but it is a committee that the chief of police listens to and understands that these are things that needs to be done in order for us to be successful and are patrolling all citizens of Dubuque. Recently, in the past, and you'll see in our initiatives, we have upgraded the MOU. Now the MOU covers all city employees. At first it was just police officers. Now it covers all. You know, we work with the city manager, we work with Human Rights Department, and we work with other individuals in regards to bringing this and having this happen. So things are continuing to move in that light. Then, this is a good one. I actually could call my mom after that one and said, "Mom, you're no longer lying to me." And she said, "What do you mean? We got a president, a black president." I remember growing up, you can be president, okay. Okay, president or something, but not the U.S. So, then the Black Lives Matter movement begins in 2013. Very important movement. Most often, people are frustrated about the Black Lives Matter movement, but I like to explain to individuals that the Black Lives Matter movement is about exactly that, a movement. It's a movement in education. It's a movement in housing. It's a movement in city government. It's a movement in politics. Black lives have to continue to keep moving in order for there to be unified success across the board when it comes to human rights. 2014, like I said, the March for Justice initiatives, and we'll talk about that a little later on. And I have this here. Ralph Montgomery laid to rest peacefully with headstone in Dubuque, Iowa, October 2016. Ralph Montgomery was an individual who was allowed to move to Dubuque late 1800s. He was allowed to move to Dubuque. His slave master allowed him to come to Dubuque, Iowa, with the honor of paying $500 for his freedom as he works the lead mines here. Of course, we know life happens, so things happen within Montgomery being here. But the previous slave owner sold Ralph to his son. So his son wanted Ralph back. He sent individuals up here to get his property. They grabbed Ralph and they made it all the way, I believe, to Bellevue, Iowa. But a neighbor told the sheriff that this is what happened, and the sheriff, went to Bellevue and got Ralph. In essence, long story short, first Supreme Court decision in the state of Iowa was Ralph Montgomery. The state of Iowa said the fact that he was working toward his freedom, and this Iowa is a free territory, and free territories at the time could not send anyone back when they know slavery will be the consequence. So Ralph earned his freedom. And Ralph ended up staying in Dubuque and later, dying in Dubuque. But for a long time, Ralph was buried at Jackson Park. And then when Linwood Cemetery began to establish, most of those were moved to Linwood, as well as Ralph was moved as well. But Ralph was in an unmarked grave. Linwood Cemetery did an excellent job of leading a cause of getting a monument for Ralph to lay in peace. And we laid Ralph, that's his headstone. That's one of the accomplishments in our life for the Dubuque NAACP, for us to understand that, living or dead, we fight for the truth. And we fight to make sure everything is happening in a civil way. Supreme Court Justice Katie wrote this: "We are, in fact, gathered today to honor a man who has brought such honor to this state by helping us discover not only who we were at that time, but who we would hope to become today. Ralph Montgomery suffered through the indignity of slavery to rise and stand against it and help forge a great meaning of our collective belief in equality, both then and now." Very key. That Supreme Court Justice of Iowa And if we have a, you know, it's always nice to have someone with that much, you know, leeway behind them to speak in a equal voice, or equality voice. It's often hard. These are our initiatives. We continue to work on the initiatives. Some of these have been fulfilled, some of them are still working. Such as, the reason I'm standing here today is because one of our committees decided, our at-large reps decided, that we need a speakers bureau. NAACP, and this speakers bureau worked directly with the school system in regards to educating our youth. That was one of our Friends of Fair Housing, key initiative for us. You know, there's individuals on the equity committee for the school district. So throughout the community, our civil rights continue to work in regards to collaborating and working with the community. But we will march on you. We will come to you all, we will talk to you about some things that we think are indecent. But there's the right way and there's the wrong way, and we would rather do it all of our ways. We don't want to look at right and wrong, we want to look at consistency. Consistency on how we can do the voter education, registration drive. We continue to work on that. Our goal is not to beat in your head that you should go vote. Our goal is to make sure you're registered to vote. Because if you're not registered to vote, why would I come talk to you? I'm not going to get your vote. You're not going to vote. So why would I even come talk to you in regards to that? That's the power of voting. We often talk about we need to get you to go vote. I need you to get registered. If you're registered, then they understand that, okay, there's 98% of the people in Dubuque, Iowa are registered to vote. I should go talk to them about something. But if only 48% or 30% of minorities are registered to vote, I don't need to bring them on the plate. I don't need to talk to them about it. The banning the box issue, one of the things that we continue to work toward. The city of Dubuque has done an excellent job, and other organizations in the community have done a job with banning the box. And banning the box simply means you want an individual, give an individual an opportunity to come and tell you their story. Instead of looking at it and say, oh, felon, oh, felon, oh, felon. Without the box, this person is not self-removing themselves, you know, from the situation. You know, we got to allow time for rehabilitation. And oftentimes it doesn't, being in prison doesn't rehabilitate you. It educates you a little bit more on how to get back. We want to secure MOU with the County of Dubuque, with city employees of the County of Dubuque. You know, we don't want to work, I don't want to see us going to Dyersville or the edge of Cascade saying, something, or, we shouldn't be monitoring them from Dubuque, Iowa. So city employees, employees who work for the county within the city. That will be the sheriffs. It will be everyone but probably the county attorney and the judges. But it will be individuals in regards who work with public accommodation, working with different types of people. So we would like that. Number 9 has changed. It modified, it grew. We looked at it, we had a committee working toward equity position within the school district, as well as the equity position within the city of Dubuque. And so a lot of these, some of these have evolved into other things. We continue to work with the My Brother's Keeper Initiative, the Dream Center, Crescent Community Health Center. We need to get over there a little bit more. We really do, with the movement and everything. So if you don't see your name up there, we would love to put your name up there because, like I said, we're constantly moving. The source of income continues to be a thorn in my side, but we're continually working on that. One of our at-large chairs work directly with Inclusive Dubuque in regards to co-moderating or co-chairing the housing sector. And I think we're growing toward, one of the good things about the source of income is that now in our newspaper we do not have do not accept Section 8 in there anymore. So the landlord, the housing providers have worked to effectively take that out of our last housing director, Alvin Nash. He said that was, you know, you can see discrimination right there. When it's right, you know, when you can identify, come on and say, I am not accepting anything with anybody named Anthony. You know, and it's written right there. So those are things. Any questions?
I have
Yes.
two quick ones there. One is, why did the NCAA start in 1908 with the riots in Springfield? I grew up in Springfield. I wasn't there then, but I was just curious because there were riots before that. What made that so critical for the NAACP to get started? And the second question was the voter identification law here in Iowa and how that's going to impact on lots of people in terms of getting out the vote in 2004.
Well, yes, good question. Well, the first one is, I believe it started there because one of the founders were close in that area. And it seems to be, Springfield is further south in Illinois. So it seems to be kind of in a neutral middle area of the United States without going too south.
Okay.
You know, you don't want to go too south, but you want to stay safe. So I think Illinois was a safer boundary for us to do in regards to that. With the voting aspect of it, we're working directly with, well, our secretary happens to be on the, help me out, what's it?
League of Women Voters.
Yeah.
League of Women Voters.
Yeah. So our secretary happens to be that. So a lot of our information, she becomes our liaison in regards to how that's working. That's going to be a tough one. I think, you know, we're going to look mostly into mobility because registration is great, but oftentimes the elderly or those who are, you know, unable to get to a spot, we need to look at voter mobility. So that's one of the things that we're going to put into voter mobility as well as education. You know, if I'm educating, that's fine. But I can educate you all day, but if you can't make it there, it comes to a matter. So voter mobility is high on our list in regards to working in regards to the voting aspect.
How did the law change? What is the difference in the law that we're
You
at?
have to have voter ID. You have to have an identification card to
Yeah.
be able to show up at the voting booth
Right.
now. And that's seen as voter suppression by many people around the country.
You know, and there's pros and cons for me on both of them because one of the things I do work for, you know, I in the beginning I didn't explain that one of the things that I do work toward, my passion is always working toward young black males, making sure they become something more than what people claim them to be. So I'm always working toward making sure young black males grow to be, you know, black men. So, but I always jump on them about IDs. It's very important that you have to ID yourself. You know, because law enforcement can hold you for 48 hours if you can't ID yourself. Any type of institutionalized place for young black males tend to not work out in their favor. Because in order to go into an institution, you have to be fingerprinted. The fingerprint is one of the most common things that usually get people in trouble. Or they can follow you know, people can follow you around. So I always tell young black men to always have an ID. People always have an ID. So when it comes to voting, they can use it. They can use it to suppress. But I think if we work as citizens, we work more actively about making sure they're not suppressing anything. If we be proactive instead of reacting to the actual what they're trying to do, you know, I think we're in a better light because it's like me telling young black man you need to carry ID at all times, and then they don't have it when they go vote, or they do have it, or someone can. So I'm kind of pro and con. Any other question?
Quick organizational type question. So the initiatives from the Dubuque branch Do you develop what those are, or do you adopt some national level initiatives, or is each branch going to do their own thing to accommodate and fit well with the work?
What we do every year, we receive a book of resolutions that we work on within our national meeting in the summer. So, and then we always, as branches, we try to develop our initiative in regards to what those resolutions are. So the national organization does lead in a broad manner, and then the branches are allowed some leeway. So the way the organization is broken down, there's the national, and then there's regions. We're in the Iowa, Nebraska region. So President Betty Andrews is our president, and she's in Des Moines. So our region works, and unfortunately, the same things are still coming up every year. Housing, education, employment, mass incarceration. You know,
Same across the region, but you can dial in something specific for.
we can dial in specific directly, you know. And so, you know, as we see fit, what's going to benefit the people in Dubuque, Iowa, it's very important for us to go that route. Like one of the routes is Hidden Figures. Hidden Figures was the theme 2 years ago. We love it so much in Dubuque, Iowa, and the nation that all of you should have got a card, right? Hopefully that's a hidden figure that you have never known about. And the only way to get out of here, I'm sorry, you gotta get a card. In order to leave, you have to pass that in. So we love hidden, so we always go with the national theme, but the underlying theme in Dubuque, Iowa is always Hidden Figures. So we work toward making sure that people understand that there are hidden figures all over the world. And unless we acknowledge them and continue to acknowledge them throughout history and our conversations and our developments, they will stay hidden. So that's what we try to do all the time.
That's helpful, thank you.
Yeah, Mary?
I can pass it out.
Oh, okay. Also, this is Lunch and Learn, and since I gave you guys cards, I hope you learned something. Any other questions? I can talk all day, and they said I can't.
So Anthony, I got a hidden figure whose name is Angela Davis, and I happened to be at UCLA when she was talking back in the 60s and got a chance to hear her through the area, and she was quite a spokesperson. So she was not a hidden figure.
Okay. And she's not a hidden figure for Dubuque, Iowa as well. She came to visit University of Dubuque, I think, in 1971 or 72 up in that area. So, any other questions? Yes.
I guess I just add a resource when you talk about hidden figures, and some people probably saw it. The New York Times has done a new series of black folks that passed away in history that they did not cover and are now looking back and say, oh my gosh, this was a leader in the country, this was a leader. And it was just in the paper, I don't think this last Sunday, but the Sunday before, and it's a beautiful expose, and they're going to do it every year where they're going to bring more stories of
That's great.
black citizens who were should have been recognized when they passed away and didn't. So if you're interested, go in, and the storytelling is what very good of it.
Great.
So bringing up more hidden figures, right?
Thank you. Well, I thank all of you for your time. I appreciate the question.